Write that down, Fumi Saito.
Iron Claw in Japanese.
All right. Has it come out yet officially?
Actually, it's not gonna start until like the first week of April. But they've been doing this press only sneak preview, so I was able to go there, and I went there actually twice. You know, you watching a movie once and you get that, and second time you really get the details. So I decided to go there twice, and so I've already watched it twice. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and because it's like a 130-minute film.
Yeah.
You know, 2 hours and 10 minutes, and actually it was really too short to cover everything.
There was a lot left out.
Yeah, and see, if you wanted to deal with Bruiser Brody, you know, Bruiser Brody should have some episode, you know, Von Erich's family and the Fritz and Brody. And if you cover people like Gino Hernandez, he also died overdose, right? And people like Chris Adams, he was shot and killed by his best friend, you know. And the movie did not have Chris Von Erich in there. Yeah.
They didn't talk about Lance Von Erich either.
Yeah, but actually Lance Von Erich has very short nonverbal role in there. I think that was one of those Lance Von Erich episode was one of the things that they have to cut out to make it movie. Yeah.
There was no way to do a good movie without streamlining it a little bit. I mean, if you're gonna do it,
I'm sure this film that can be like the TV drama series, this Iron Claw season 1 with 13 1-hour episodes or something. Still don't cover. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So Lance Von Erich has a credit in the movie, you know. Lance, yeah, actually has a credit in there. Also, he was credited as producer too. You know, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Yeah, and then he had this wig, you know. Then he was in later on in the movie where Kevin Von Erich standing in the corner, like thinking about something else, but the match was over. Oh well, you know. So that was like later on because Lance Von Erich was created to pretend that he was a cousin. He wasn't, but you know what I'm saying? Then in the middle of this Lance, this storyline, he left World Class to join another company or something. And Fritz Von Erich went on the press conference and said, "There's no way he was our family." He introduced him as a cousin, you know, like a son of Waldo Von Erich or something, right? But that was like a turmoil, period of this Von Erich thing. But overall, it was a very good movie, don't you think?
I think it was really well done.
Yeah.
I think it felt like one of the first real pieces of artistic cinema or visual that treats wrestling with knowledge. It has knowledge, but it also has a lot of care into it for the story and the people that were involved. Like the casting was fantastic. The casting was really
all the Von Erichs,
let me pull back. I don't want to say it was fantastic completely. Some of the casting was amazing. When I say that, I'm talking about the people in the main story. There are other qualms I have that we'll get to, but it's in the big picture, some of these people were perfectly
and also
cast.
it wasn't documentary.
Exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't a documentary flick. You know, it's not a dark side of wrestling. It's a movie, Hollywood movie, and also the audience of general audience, movie audience. Of course, all the wrestling fan will watch it, but it was presented as a movie, Hollywood movie. And what was interesting at the beginning was like usually that this caption says based on true story, right? But this was labeled. This was inspired by true story. Yeah, so inspired, and the word in Japanese subtitles it's the same actually, based on true story or the inspired by true story. Japanese subtitle in Japanese theater, kind of same, but the word inspired was pretty important. Yeah, inspired.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I that's what they were trying to do. They're trying to tell a story.
It's a story about family, story about father and sons, of course, story about professional wrestling, and story about tragedy, of course, and somewhere that it's not all tragedy. At the end of the movie, he really showed in the clip that Kevin Von Erich and Pam has been married 40 years. If you have to watch all the way to the end roll, and it shows the real picture of Kevin and his family, and Kevin Von Erich and Pam have been married 40 years, 4 kids, and 13 grandchildren. It's like it was saved. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere that it has to be more inspired. That in spite of this the tragedies, that Kevin really survived.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those little 2 kids were that the Ross Von Erich and Marshall Von Erich, who worked for Pro Wrestling Noah later on.
That's right. Yeah.
And they had credit, Marshall and Ross. It's like those are real characters,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 2 little boys, and Kevin crying, but it's like, hey, I'll be your brother. It's like, your sons.
Yeah, it was very emotional.
Yeah. Is that all true? Like, brother start dying,
I mean, that's true. And the line, what does he say? He says, I can't,
I'm not even, I used to be anymore. Brothers. I'm not even the brother anymore.
That's the line. That's the whole
he
movie.
really said that in his real life.
That's right. I think that it's so tragic. I think anybody like with a soul can relate.
Yeah. And pretty much like the first 20 minutes or 30 minutes into the movie, then girlfriend Pam asked Kevin Von Erich, is that your oldest brother syndrome thing? Then he really comes out, actually, I'm not even the oldest brother, second oldest brother. They had Jack Jr. He died when he was 5. Then it really, when the camera goes into Von Erich's family home, the big framed picture, all these brothers in there, but in the corner of this frame has a little kid's wallet size photo. Stick it in there, like who isn't there. It's a Jack Jr. And they really introduced that by not explaining it, by looking at the screen. So there must be another brother in there. It's not there. The oldest brother who passed away young, and second time I noticed a lot of other things. The beginning of the film is black and white. Fritz Von Erich, the father doing he looks like Fritz Von Erich there.
He was maybe one of my favorite parts of the whole film.
He does sound looks like Von Erich and sound like Von Erich, and
very convincing
and tough Texas father, right? Yeah, and and after Fritz Von Erich finishes his match and come out of this arena, and the 2 little kids, that's Kevin and David, right? Like meeting up father, and Doris, Fritz's wife, is pregnant in that film. That's Carrie in her stomach. So that was very interesting. Then fast forward about 20 years, you're in the Texas home. But actually, it's a movie. It's a real good movie, but it's a movie, so they really condensed a lot of things. It made it look like Kevin Von Erich was, like it was debuting in 1979. Actually, he debuted back in 77, Then brother David debuts 78, And then Kerry Von Erich. Kerry Von Erich, the 3rd brother, actually like a 4th brother in reality, but the 3rd brother in the wrestling Von Erich brothers. Kerry Von Erich debuted in 1978. Did you know that? So it's not really that the Jimmy Carter, boycotted Moscow Olympic in 1980 and he couldn't go to Olympic, therefore he became professional wrestler. That was a story that was given for a long time, like a myth. with this discus, that he will use this discus punch with his wrestling, maneuvers, because he was a track runner and a discus thrower, and he was a junior Olympic, and he was in junior Olympic, that much true, and got the athletic scholarship and went to Houston University. And the story was that then President Jimmy Carter boycotted Moscow Olympic, therefore U.S. wouldn't go there, so he can't compete in Olympics, so he became wrestler. That was a story that was given 40 years ago, but it was somewhat fantasy, but in the movie it treated like how it was. Yeah. And it's amazing to rebuild this Dallas Sportatorium, that burned down, some years back, Earth, and but they rebuilt Sportatorium, look just like Sportatorium, and you're a guitar player that you recognize song from Tom Petty, you recognize that, and some Rush songs, and was that the Romeo and Juliet? Is that a Blue Oyster Cult?
I couldn't tell you on that one.
Okay, yeah, but that's but my high school rock and roll, hit songs, from late 70s into early 80s, and also it's all Southern rock, and the actual song was in there. Well, it's like what people are listening, and it's in Dallas, so some of the people actually wearing this, 10-gallon cowboy hat and bell-bottom jeans, right? Yeah. And it's like really, it looks like, it's like, if it wasn't a wrestling movie, it looks like an 80s movie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
80s love story music, and in that, it's a wrestling version of your Bohemian Rhapsody movie, or what's the Elton John one, the Rocket
Man.
Yeah, it's like that. So it finally had wrestling, version of Bohemian Rhapsody, and it really, really lived up to all the expectation. We're wrestling fans, so we notice, they skipped some of the historical moments. You know what I'm saying? That the event didn't happen accordingly, but remember that they portrayed David Von Erich like died in a ring accident or something in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
That the
stomach issue,
in the blown up the intestines.
Intestines.
Yeah. But actually, David Von Erich died in Japan before his, before the tour starts, the morning. That it was 1984 February 10th. The tour was starting. That he didn't even have first match there. Well, he had toured before that,
mm-hmm.
And Kevin Von Erich and David Von Erich, competed in Giant Baba's All Japan Pro Wrestling, and they won the Asian Tag Team titles. Yeah, when they were like 20 something, 20 probably, and that David Von Erich tour, he died. That was going to be very, very important tour for David Von Erich. If you remember, he carried this United National UN title belt in his shoulder, right? With his nameplate on it, David Von Erich. All Japan Pro Wrestling, Giant Baba's All Japan Pro Wrestling obviously had planned for David to have, they had, it's like 6-7 years before Triple Crown, there was Pacific Wrestling Federation PWF title, and there's an International Heavyweight title, and United National Heavyweight title, 3 singles belt, and there was a Phantom title, change that they announced it, that the Michael Hayes and David Von Erich had a title match in Texas, and David Von Erich beat Michael Hayes to become UN champion. Then he came to Japan, and he was going to have a title match with Tenryu. It was Ric Flair against Jumbo Tsuruta NWA World title match, and David Von Erich and Tenryu UN title match for that tour, which never happened, And after David passed away, they brought in Ricky Steamboat right away. Then they had Ricky Steamboat 10 Rules UN title match, now vacant. Does that make sense? Yeah. But they had nameplate David Von Erich on the belt, so they obviously had a plan. And this, tour was very interesting. Brody was in there, and Brody actually was one of the first person who found David that morning. Yeah. And it was Mrs. Baba that he couldn't, they shouldn't send David's, body back to America all by himself. That there was Super Destroyer #1 and #2, who was Bill Irwin and Scott Irwin, who was working Dallas at the time. All Japan companies sent these two Irwin brothers, Bill Irwin and Scott Irwin, with David back to Dallas. You carry that body home. Technically, you could just send the body home, right? But they weren't going to do that. That send Bill Irwin and Scott Irwin with David. Then you guys come right back. Wow! So they did, in the short period of time, they did the round trip twice. And the Brody, that was in the magazine, that the Brock character, he crying and just kissed David, and that was all filmed in Japan. Yeah, it was in the regular news, and it was a newspaper that American popular star professional wrestler passed away rather mysteriously in a hotel room in Japan. Yeah. Then 3 months later, that was Parade of Champions in Texas, right? Texas Stadium. That the then 24-year-old Kerry Von Erich going over on Ric Flair to be NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Yeah. And in the movie, they used the real footage, remember? And the TV screen, that wasn't the actor. They actually used the actual footage of Kerry Von Erich doing the backslide to beat Ric Flair. And so they didn't have that actor part. But after that, this NWA championship belt on the living room, table, and they made it look like Kerry Von Erich took a bike ride and got the accident that night. Actually, Kerry Von Erich wouldn't have that very fatal, the motorcycle accident until June of 86, 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And he had, New Japan tour right before that, then had a motorcycle accident, and it was probably Fritz, not to blame, but it was Fritz's, decision to get Kerry back in the ring the very same year for the Thanksgiving night. Then re-injured again. You know what I'm saying? Then, rather miraculously, 1 year later in 87, Kerry walks back into the ring like nothing happened. He's walking in the ring. That's when he had the magic boots already. But the movie made it look like, that he's getting out of bed, right? And then walking with crutch. Then it's like he's like, foot amputated. Yeah. But it was like a very much like wrestler knew, and the people close to the situation knew that he's, he has this magic boots to work in the ring, but it wasn't really announced in the dressing room or anything like that. Yeah. And today's, like you and I talked about that, that the people in the podcast, that he was the biggest secret in wrestling industry. Nobody knew about it until he died. Actually, a lot of people knew, that the Kerry's working after his foot was amputated, but these magic boots, but that sounds dirty, right? What should I call it? His miracle boots, I
don't know. This is kind of almost like a trap. I don't know what to say. What's PC? His cyborg supplemental boot thing.
And shortly after he started working with the boots, a lot of people started talking about a lot of things that Kerry Von Erich comes to building with the boots on. Kerry Von Erich takes shower with the boots on. You know, he goes back to hotel with the boots on. And somebody like, it was late Scott Hall. He knew the story, and during New Japan tour, Scott Hall and Kerry Von Erich talking to each other in the hallway. Kerry Von Erich, Scott Hall, on purpose stepped on Kerry's toe, stepped on it, right? Then Kerry didn't even notice. Scott Hall stepped on his boot. It's like, because it's not there, right? It's like, then a lot of things. But actually, it was the one time, I believe it was, I wrote it down somewhere. Yeah, July of '88 in Las Vegas, AWA, showboard, AWA TV taping. They were doing AWA champion Jerry Lawler against WCCW world class world champion Kerry Von Erich, world title unification matches, if you remember. Yeah. And they did that more than once, like a Super Clash 2. They did that in Memphis, they did that in Dallas, they did that in Las Vegas, Chicago, all these places. And this July '88, Kerry Von Erich was having a single match against Colonel De Beers. Remember Colonel De Beers? Mm-hmm. Yeah. During that match, the boot came off. Then Kerry Von Erich rolled out of the ring real quick and put his foot underneath the apron. And they put the boots back on, came right back, and it worked. And people go, what did just happen? The boot came off, and some people really saw that. And but it was not really publicized, but it was like almost like a wrestling myth at the time. The boot came off. And Kerry Von Erich put his foot, the leg underneath the ring apron, and hid. Then he put the boot back on. Then went right back to the ring. Yeah, so there was a lot of things. So it was like a well kept secret, but a lot of people knew. Nonetheless, Kerry was able to work in the ring with that boots. He was throwing drop kicks, and with that boots. He was in WWE, Texas Tornado time. That was all that. And he won the Intercontinental title with that. And he actually had, after that magic boot thing, Kerry Von Erich came back to New Japan and had regular match, And also during WWE stint, the WWE tenure, Kerry Von Erich and 20 other WWE superstars had the 3 different tours in 1992. 1991 was SWS, Super World Sports Tenrus Group. At the time, SWS and our magazine, Weekly Pro Wrestling, was like, our magazine was banned from SWS, So I wasn't able to officially go to the matches. But when WWE guys, the whole 20 WWE superstars came to Japan, I went to see my friend Mike, Road Warrior Hawk. At the time, Legion of Doom, right? Hawk, so I went to Akasaka Prince Hotel to meet with Hawk. And Kerry Von Erich came with him. Then it's amazing. It's 2 superstars from 2 different territories, it's like big superstars on their own, But actually, when they were working in WWE, Mike, Hawk, Road Warrior Hawk, Legion of Doom Hawk, and Kerry Von Erich, Texas Tornado, they became best friends. Yeah, that was very, very interesting. And so that was the time he already had that magic boots period. So he must have worked like 5 years with that. Yeah. Until the day he decided to go. Yeah.
I saw him when I was a kid at the first ever wrestling show that I went to.
Oh, the live?
Yeah.
And the Buffalo, New York?
No, it was Albany, New York.
Albany, New York. Yeah.
It was a new arena called the Knickerbocker Arena,
Knickerbocker Arena. Okay.
Which is now it was the Pepsi Arena, and it was the I think it's now the Times Union Center. No, sorry, it's MVP Arena now. It's where the International Hall of Fame is. International Wrestling Hall of Fame is. Okay. And that's where I saw Kerry Von. He was called Texas Tornado.
Texas Tornado at the time, yeah.
Yes.
What was the main event?
Okay, so this was, I'm sure this
was that 91, 92?
Yeah, 91, 92. This really informs my fandom. The main event was supposed to be Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan.
Okay. After WrestleMania 7 then, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or
before?
Maybe before. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
But the Gulf War time.
I think it was after. I think it was
okay.
Like it was after, but they were still doing the program.
Still doing it. You're right.
But he didn't show up. Well, it did happen with Sergeant Slaughter and the local hero Hacksaw Jim Duggan from Glens Falls, New York.
Yes. Okay.
And I remember buying the foam 2x4.
Foam 2x4.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes,
very
Texas Tornado was the Intercontinental Champion and had a match with Mr. Perfect.
Oh, that sounds good. Actually, yeah,
it was great. And there was one of the best matches. I'll never forget. It was maybe the second match: Ricky Steamboat versus Haku.
Oh yeah. Doesn't sound all that great on paper, but it's a good match, huh?
Like a 6-year-old kid, and he blew the fire and everything, and martial arts. Yeah. It was pretty mind blowing for me as a young kid. Oh, we could talk about that another time, but let's get back to talking about Von Erichs.
The movie, Von Erichs. Yeah. So the movie made it look like the night after he won the NWA World Heavyweight title from Ric Flair, he took a motorcycle and got accident. It actually wasn't that night. You know what I'm saying? It like 2 years later, he didn't get his motorcycle accident until like summer of '86. Yeah, but he tried to come back too soon and got injured again. But 1 year later, he came like a new guy, after the amputation, right? And he started walking in the ring just fine, Yeah. But the movie actually was like it was 80s feeling, and wrestling. Not every wrestling has to be WWE. You know what I'm saying? It was Dallas. They talked about the Texas Heavyweight title and also the World Heavyweight Champion, National Wrestling Alliance, NWA. They come from Missouri, they call it, So St. Louis, and actually during the movie, the Fritz Von Erich talk about Sam Machinik, right? Yeah, from St. Louis. Yeah, so the champion, NWA champion, come from St. Louis, right? But to bring that World Heavyweight title to my home, like Dallas, and they didn't touch upon that. But 1975, Fritz Von Erich was president of NWA for one term, actually. Yeah. And so NWA emphasis was interesting because, well, it's not, it's not that important if you weren't a wrestling fan, but they really used like a really historical actual fact that the territories from St. Louis to Dallas, Texas, the membership, of National Wrestling Alliance, that the traveling world champion come to your town kind of thing. And that the actor who did the Harley Race was really good, don't you think?
He was
big belly.
One of my other favorites. Yeah. Harley Race was very good. The Ric Flair, I don't know about. I was
like a flaky. Yeah,
I didn't understand it. I didn't understand that, and I mean, Bruiser Brody was such a big part of the story, but I understand you got to make certain choices.
The movie was a little bit longer, but then you have to have the whole episode on Bruiser Brody. So but they did have Bruiser Brody in there, like going over high spot.
Yeah,
because this is not a wrestling movie. I mean, it's, of course, like I said, wrestling fans will be watching it, but most people will be watching this as a movie. and that the two tag teams the fighting that night, they're going over high spot. You do this and do that, and double drop kick and this and that. Yeah, they'll come in and you do this and do that. So they almost have to have that kind of scene.
It's for storytelling.
Yeah, also general understanding and general perception of what professional wrestling is. You know, but it didn't really hurt. You know, because there was a scene where then girlfriend Pam asked Kevin, but that's all showbiz, right? And it's and then Kevin straight up said, but you get reward. You do well at your job, and I'm Texas heavyweight champion, and I want to be world heavyweight champion. I mean, serious, Yeah. And then Kevin Von Erich, on all the Von Erich talk like that about business too. I did the interview with Kevin Von Erich, Kerry Von Erich, and Mike Von Erich. I spoke with them. I did not meet David, but it was like they really actually when they withdrew from NWA, they created world-class world heavyweight title, of course. But at the time, when they were member of NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, it is really hard for them to actually have world title in Dallas. You know what I'm saying? So it was real, pretty real. That part has to be in that movie. The Fritz Von Erich, former, superstar wrestler, now the owner of wrestling company in Dallas, and promoter and producer, and like playing favorite among brothers. And it was, do you remember the kitchen eating, the dining tables, and the Fritz Von Erich saying, my favorite is David, Kevin, and Kerry, and Mike, but that order can change if you work hard. It's so cruel to rank brothers, right? But Kevin Von Erich personally told me that, actually. My dad play favorite. Yeah. That sometimes it's David, and it was David, and then now it's Kerry. And Kevin Von Erich told me in person that he likes to be number 2. It's a good position. Number 2. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So David went to different territory like NWA Florida, and with WWE, Kerry Von Erich's Texas Tornado toured all over the world. Kevin Von Erich didn't really travel. He really stayed in Texas. Yeah. But he knew this, like a oldest brother type of thing. Not actually older brother, but the oldest in those 4 brothers, that he want to be number 2 and stayed there, And he really knew how to play that, father's games. That's why this movie was really good. This movie is special relationship between Fritz, father, and Kevin. Of course, there must be a relationship between Fritz and David, Fritz and Kerry, and Fritz and Mike. And obviously, Mike was portrayed real good in this movie. That he made it look like no, I don't want to wrestle. You know what I mean? Yeah, he did not want to be a wrestler, but he had to, kind of thing. And because Mike took his own life, And David thing was really, really shocking. The first losing oldest brother Jack Jr. so young, tragedy, And David died when he was 25 on the other side of the world in Japan. Then Fritz Von Erich was father, but also promoter mind, that he really used tragedy to make Texas Stadium Parade of Champion the biggest wrestling event of all time. That's the beginning of this turmoil of the tragedy, don't you think? That when the night Kerry Von Erich won the NWA title from Kerry Von Erich, it was not in movie, but they raised the price of all the merchandise. Like a Von Erich T-shirt, Von Erich baseball cap, and everything. They raised the price and made a lot of money, and we didn't really think much about it, at the time. But something was like really spinning, and actually Kevin Von Erich, this movie was portrayed actually through Kevin's vision, right? Not because he is the only surviving, who made it through and he lived, but actually there was one time that the Kevin Von Erich almost died. Did you know that?
Tell me about it.
Yeah, Kevin Von Erich almost died in Sportatorium ring in I'd say 91 or 92 at the Sportatorium, and it stopped breathing, no pulse or whatever. And then, if you remember Fantastics, Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton, the small guys, but super, super, super talented.
Extremely talented.
They used to come to All Japan, early 90s as regular.
Awesome tag.
Yeah. They were working world-class Dallas at the time. Tommy Rogers jumped in the ring and gave Kevin Von Erich CPR. Then Kerry Von Erich, woke up and survived, And the reason Tommy Rogers was able to do so was that he was a lifeguard at the swimming pool, at one time, at one point. Tommy Rogers jumped in the ring and saved Kevin's life. That part wasn't in the movie, yeah. And because Kevin, this movie couldn't be made without Kevin's vision, right? Yeah. And so he wasn't all that safe either, That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And the order was that, Jack Jr. passed away, Kevin Von Erich passed away, then Mike, it was 92, I believe. Mike actually took his own life in 87, right after Kerry Von Erich's first motorcycle accident. Yeah. Then 4 years later in 91, Chris Von Erich shot himself in heart with his pistol, the youngest brother, he was only 21, but he was not in movie. And some people already asked this movie director, why wasn't Chris in that movie? And it says way too tragic. And if he covered this, Chris Von Erich episode, you cannot finish the movie. You know what I'm saying? Way too tragic. So it treated just Kevin and David and Kerry and Mike. There was a movie, yeah. So Chris is not in it. But at the very end of the end roll, in memory of David and Kerry and Mike and Chris and Doris' mother. And so they gave credit to, at the very end of the movie, in the end roll, you have to sit through all the credit and the director and everybody. And the very end of the movie, they show photos of Kevin Von Erich and his actual families, right? And there was in memory of David and Kerry and Mike and Chris and Doris in there. So they really covered it, yeah. But the movie did not carry Chris's episode or Gino Hernandez episode or Brody's episode or Chris Adams episode. That's way too much, right? Yeah.
That's right. There wasn't a territory like that.
Yeah, but it was like, as a movie, it gets spiritual. It probably didn't happen like that. But after Kerry shot himself, that just nick of time, it didn't make it. But Kevin Von Erich went to parents' house and find Kerry, but in the fantasy part, Kerry Von Erich's walking with his foot on. Then being on the boat, it's like almost like a Japanese Buddhist metaphor that you go over that river, you go into heaven. Sanzu no Kawa, and that he actually, rowed the boat, and on the other side, edge of the water, David and Kerry, Mike, all waving, "Hey, come over," right? Then actually brothers reunite and even meet up, like the oldest brother he never even met, the 5-year-old Jack Jr., then they really, reunite. It's a fantasy part, but that really saved the movie.
The ending, the movie was good, but the ending made the movie really good.
Yeah,
Really
because
tied it together.
all these people just died, and that's the end of the movie. You have to have something that, give you the feeling that it was a good movie, and I'm glad I watched it. It was a tragedy, but it was somewhere that it's like some heartwarming moments or something. Yeah. And also now that the Kevin, I used to be a brother. I mean, I used to have a lot of brothers. I'm not even a brother anymore. And young little kid Marshall and Ross came in, comfort his father, and it was a great ending of the movie. Yeah. And, I want people to watch it. It's not just wrestling movie. It's probably the best movie that dealt with wrestling. Mickey Rourke, the wrestler, was pretty good, but it was like tragic, pretty tragic too, but it was fictional, and single, the wrestler who used to be superstar but still wrestling, and it's like almost like a graveyard of wrestlers, signing autograph and all these things, 80s wrestler 20 years later. Mickey Rourke's movie was good. There was quite a few other wrestling movies, but not nearly as good as this one. Yeah,
I can't think of any.
Paradise Alley, that Sylvester Stallone and Terry Funk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a Paradise Alley, but they dealt in 1930s wrestling.
Yeah, but this had a lot going on, a lot of positives. And guys like Zac Efron changing their body so much for the role, or
and then the hairdo is just like 1970s Kevin Von Erich, and barefooted, of course. And they did the wrestling scene real good too.
Yeah,
I loved the Fabulous Freebirds, especially Terry Gordy, the person who did the Terry Gordy. He did pretty good,
Right.
Curly hair and all that. Yeah.
On this topic, it's an aside, but have you ever seen, or are you familiar with the movie called Highlander?
Highlander.
From maybe 1987, 86. Christopher Lambert.
Okay.
It was like a sword fantasy, urban fantasy movie.
Oh, okay.
I bring it up because I watched it again recently. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but the beginning of the movie, the opening scene, I believe it's in the Sportatorium, and Fabulous Freebirds are in a match against Tonga Kid and someone else who I forgot. But
somebody like King Parsons, somebody like that.
I think it was King Parsons, actually.
King Parsons, yeah.
I think it was.
Iceman King Parsons is a big character in the world class. Wasn't in the movie, but him, Kamala, the original John Kamala, great kabuki at the time, and a lot of Dallas superstars there. So that was Iceman King Parsons.
I believe so. I have to go back and double check, but I bring it up just to. I mean, that shows you how almost, I guess, mainstream, you could say, the company was at the time. It shows how big it was in a certain area. It's hard to explain because, territories, it was communicating with people.
World Class was big, non-WWF company that was on like a Christian channel that happened to go into all kinds of different cities on cable channels. I lived in Minneapolis at the time. Between 79 and 84, I was able to watch World Class Dallas in like a channel 23. It's like a UHF channel that you just can work on. It's like I can watch Dallas now, and I was able to watch Dallas wrestling from Minnesota. Yeah,
I was only able to begin watching it in New York when it merged and was on ESPN.
They did that. Yeah.
It wasn't the same. It was Global Wrestling Federation.
Oh, GWF. Oh, after that. Oh, this movie really had a scene that Kevin Von Erich decided to sell the company to Jerry Jarrett.
Yeah.
You know?
I thought that was a good detail.
Yeah. And it's like nobody sitting in this old, beat up, sportatorium. And the person looks like Jerry Jarrett, Yeah, it was good. So he, Kevin Von Erich was wrestler, but Kevin Von Erich was also part owner of the company, was doing the company, office work. And he, probably Fritz did not want to sell the company. That's true too, but it was a time to sell. And was interesting at the time. Memphis, Tennessee company and Dallas, Texas company actually merged, Yeah. And wrestlers are flying in from Memphis to Dallas every weekend, and it was only $35 flight. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So wrestlers going back and forth Tennessee, and like a 1-hour flight, right? But it was interesting. Actual Tennessee wrestlers, Jerry Lawler, Jerry Jarrett, crew, they always travel to Dallas, Texas, and actually work to Sportatorium. And Sportatorium had this greasy French fries. I had too. And you had to eat that really greasy French fry when you're there. Yeah. Yeah, so it was interesting. So yeah, GWF, Global Wrestling, was that Pedicino, what's his name?
Joe Pedicino.
Yeah, Joe Pedicino ran the company then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't put, have that part. So the end of world class,
Yes.
And for Kevin, it was interesting that he did not choose this, wrestling as his career. For Kevin, it was like the summer job that happened to last 18 years. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, he thought it was going to be just summer job, that I'll get in the ring and wrestle and don't know what to do with life, But that was a summer job that happened to last 18 years. And Kevin, like, really free spirited, huh? Yeah. Because David had a different pressure. He was sent to different territory, Florida. And also, he was a very good candidate of NWA World Heavyweight. I'm talking about David. Like a great candidate to be next NWA World Heavyweight Champion after Ric Flair. Like, they were thinking, Hardy Race into Ric Flair. And who's after Ric Flair? David Von Erich or Ted DiBiase or somebody like that, right? And David was the one who went to outside of Dallas and went to NWA Florida and experienced heel for the first time. See, when you were in Dallas, Texas, David, Kerry, of course Kevin, everybody's like just babyface. That's it, right? So when you go to different territory, you have to become heel. Then David did that, and in Japan. What was interesting, that 88, 87, 87, 88, 87 tag team. Antonio Inoki, Kevin Von Erich against young Keiji Muto and Kengo Kimura. Inoki and Kevin Von Erich as a tag team beat younger Keiji Muto and Kengo Kimura. Yeah, that was very interesting. Yeah.
That speaks volumes of Kevin.
Yeah, because Kevin Von Erich, main event guy, obviously, but he just did not have this drive to be world heavyweight champion and carry the company. He was more like easy going, right? But it was actually Brody. People were surprised. See, February of '84, David Von Erich passed away in Japan. Giant Baba's All Japan Pro Wrestling, and Mr. and Mrs. Baba took such good care of this casket and sent David home with care. But very next year, '85, world-class Fritz Von Erichs, world-class championship wrestling, the company signed the partnership deal with Inoki's New Japan Pro Wrestling. They were like, did they have a relationship with Giant Baba's All Japan Pro Wrestling? That was the year actually Bruiser Brody switched from Baba to Inoki. And Bruiser Brody was like in the middle, he didn't want to, make it, himself look like negotiating for this company, like a company, negotiation and the business partnership and stuff like that. But it was obviously Bruiser Brody and Antonio Inoki that made New Japan and World Class partnership. That was the year that the New Japan and WWF, broke off, from this previous business partnership. Vince McMahon, 1985, first WrestleMania, they were set to go conquer the world, right? Vince McMahon stopped sending, all the WWE superstar to New Japan, and no more of that, right? Then New Japan needed to sign the deal with big company in America. There was Dallas World Class. That when you say Dallas World Class, you gotta have Kevin Von Erich and Kerry Von Erich. And Mike even toured Japan. And people like Brody was always there, but Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, the Chris Adams, a lot of wrestlers came from Dallas to New Japan Ring that year on. Yeah. But it was like, wow, Dan Baba took such good care of David. But very next year they switched affiliation. So that was like a little bit of like a shocking thing. Yeah. But so Inoki came to the end of 85 and and then part of 86. Anthony Inoki himself came to Dallas and wrestled. Yeah. And Fujinami came. And before he was Great Muta, Keiji Muto actually had was that a Black Ninja or the Super Ninja?
Super Black Ninja, I think that was
something like that. Yeah, it wasn't even Great Muta yet, but basic same gimmick. Yeah, yeah. But at the time, by the time Keiji Muto as a Super Black Ninja worked Dallas was not what it used to be. Yeah. But he traveled the very same next July Clash of Champions. The NWA Crockett debuted Muta's Great Muta. Yeah. So, but Keiji Muto did spend some time in Dallas. There was of course, Great Kabuki was born in Dallas, early 80s, like 81. Then active Fritz Von Erich, getting older, but then active babyface, older Fritz Von Erich against Great Kabuki main event, and Magic Dragon, Haru Sonoda, and also Killer Khan spent time in Dallas too. Yeah.
What about Kendo Nagasaki?
Kendo Nagasaki came in a little bit, but actually, Great Kabuki and Kendo Nagasaki never worked in the same place, same time, but the same gimmick, right? Yeah, so I think they respected each other. When Kabuki's there, when Great Kabuki's there, Kendo Nagasaki wouldn't come in. When Great Kabuki's gone, Kendo Nagasaki will come in. It's basic same character, right? And after that, Torayatsu, that Yoshiaki Yatsu came in as a Torayatsu. Tora at the time. Now they're showing the same movie 45 years later, but there was a Japanese samurai movie. It was so big. It's called Shogun, if you remember.
Yeah, there's a new show, a remake of
Not this one, no.
Yeah,
like 45 years later, but
1980
the original, 1980 original Shogun with Toranaga. So they named Yatsu Tora Yatsu. And they had Yatsu against Great Kabuki babyface this time, Japanese against Japanese in Dallas. So a lot of Japanese wrestlers came, went through this Dallas, they stayed a year at a time. And also Fritz Von Erich, the original Fritz Von Erich, toured Japan 8 times during his time. Between 1966 to his last tour being 1979, he accompanied then first appearance Bruiser Brody. That was Fritz Von Erich's last tour to Japan, January of 1979. That was a tour, Bruiser Brody's very first tour with Japan. So there was like a passing a torch thing. Yeah. And useless trivia, but Fritz Von Erich's very first tour, 1966, that was the very first match they held at Budokan. Yeah. Giant Baba's international heavyweight title. Big, superstar from America, challenger Fritz von Erich. Very first show they held at the Nippon Budokan. 1966 was the year when Beatles toured Japan and had very first concert at the Budokan.
Wow.
Yeah, so the same 1966. Useless trivia, but very historical, right? Yeah. And also, like 1971, when Fritz von Erich came to Japan, he challenged both Baba's international heavyweight title and Antonio Inoki's UN title separately. Same, we were thinking that as a kid, Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki, 2 stars in the same company. It was before All Japan or New Japan. JWA, Japan Pro Wrestling, international champion Giant Baba, UN, United National Singles champion Antonio Inoki. Wow, why do they have 2 singles titles, right? And Fritz von Erich came in and challenged each Baba and Inoki. So we had to kind of use von Erich, to see Baba's better than Inoki or Inoki's better than Baba. Von Erich was there, like a huge superstar.
One of the original.
So that was my childhood memory.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
that was 71. Then
71.
1972, Inoki opens New Japan and Baba opens All Japan. Then pretty soon JWA went down.
Next chapter.
So Von Erich was, I can say, big part of Japanese wrestling history too.
Seems like it, yeah. So I'm hoping that a lot of old and new Japanese wrestling fans see the movie and get a new perspective. And
because we talk about Von Erich and Kerry Von Erich and David Von Erich and Michael Von Erich, all these things just like yesterday, but it was like 35, 40 years ago, Yeah. For today's fan, Von Erichs are all ancient, huh?
I mean, the movie is quite popular. I think that it's really brought the name back a lot this year, but in general, I'm going to assume that somebody that's in their teens or 20s isn't that interested in, it's from a while ago.
Movie that just to watch that movie.
It's a great movie.
If you study the history, you get more out of it, of course. A lot more out of it. But just the general audience movie, you sit and eat popcorn, something, and you watch as a movie, still real good movie.
Absolutely. And I think it pays a lot of respect to pro wrestling too.
And inspired by true story. So that inspires a lot of audience. Is this true story? Oh my gosh, right? Yeah. And there was like a few times in the 90s and 2000 that people tried to make a movie of Von Erichs. It never happened. But this director was the one who insisted, we'll make this movie. Yeah. And Hollywood budget, Yeah. Yeah. And really good movie. And Zac Efron did real well, doing the Kevin Von Erich. All the wrestling scene was all pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They proved that you could do a really good wrestling movie. And so that you could explore a lot of different ways to tell a story or different stories
and
to tell.
And then the actual pain and actual glory and real feeling of people who are involved. If you don't like wrestling, it's all show business. Wrestling is so fake. It's not as simple. This movie helps understand that. I think. Yeah. Real good movie. So
check it out.
Yeah. And it's gonna open the first week of April in Japan. And a lot of people writing good thing about this Von Erich movie now. And hope a lot of people get to see it.
Yeah. So we'll have to do this again later this year when the Dump Matsumoto series is on Netflix.
And also Mayu Iwatani's movie come out too.
Oh, is that on Netflix too?
No, it's like a theatrical movie.
Wow. Okay, great.
Yeah. It's runaway wrestler because she ran away from home. Yeah. So it's 2 different kinds. And I have friends who sat in the Korakuen Hall as extra, as being audience. And Dump Matsumoto's part was, it's like guys, late 70s into early 80s as a scene, right? All the extra was told to tuck your t-shirt in. I mean, today's kids, you leave your shirt out, right?
Sure.
But in the 80s, all the audience, you tuck your shirt in. Yeah, so it's like everybody in the audience, yeah. Don't have that ponytails. Nobody had that ponytail in the 80s, kind of thing. Yeah. So they made sure, and they gave everybody big bento,
Oh, good. That's good.
Yeah. So it's good to sit all day though, because when you participate as an extra in a movie, they make you sit all day, Yeah, but this friend of mine just had a real great time. He did the extra on both movies, Iwatani movie and Dump Matsumoto movie.
Wow.
Real fan, huh? Yeah. But it's like it's good to have wrestling movies, not just for the popularity of it, but it helps people understand wrestling a lot deeper. Yeah,
wrestling's very complex, so it's hard to. I mean, they did a good job telling the story in this movie, and even then, there's still so much more to the story in real life.
Yeah,
so it did a good job of proving
it's
how
easy to say wrestling is all show business and it's a phony and fake and all these things. It's not. What's the difference? Is okay, real world out there is the stuff you see in the regular, something other than wrestling. They are just as phony. They are just as fake. And this world is full of prejudice. This world is full of stereotypes. You really have to really focus. Yeah, and this is pretty realistic. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap it then. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So until next time, for the Iron Claw. Very good.
And this championship belt is really good.
It looks great.
Texas heavyweight. It's Iron Claw in katakana.
Yeah.
Iron Claw in katakana. Is that good though?
Mm-hmm. Where can you be found?
Fumi Saito on Facebook, at Fumihikodayo, Fumihikodayo, Fumihikodayo on X, Twitter. Or Instagram, Fumi Saito 2001.
And on X, I'm at Justin M. Knipper, Knipper. And you can email us at thisiswritethatdown@gmail.com.
Yeah, and then also we were going to answer a lot of questions, but let's have this answer question episode next time.
Sure. We'll do question and answers. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, until next time.
So long from Tokyo.
Woo.